Folks, you should be able to hear me speaking a little bit now. I'll turn that off, whoops. Folks, you should be able to hear me speaking a little bit now. I'll turn that off, whoops. Folks, you should be able to hear me speaking a little bit now. I think that's better. Okay. Okay. Don't want that to peak too much. I'll just turn it right back to there. I think we're now... Oh, now we're getting into a good volume place. I'm going to turn the sound off there. What a wild day that's been. Folks, welcome. We're just going to start in a minute. You know, it's been a few months since I had my streaming rig all set up, so remember that, you know, first day issues can happen to the best of us. I'm going to be really happy in a minute that we'll be starting our first lecture for COMP2300/6300. So I'll just give you another minute. It sounds a bit small. I'm really sorry about that, but I'm trying to get a system that will work. Possibly it will improve in later days, but I would just ask you to turn your volume up. The music will stop after we get to the real slides, so you know. Look, I think we're kind of ready to go, so I'm going to be just turning things around to my big Charles self. My camera is not the right gain. You turn around and you turn your back on a computer and the settings get all changed. I don't know why it's got... Is that not even working? I don't know. 270 was the number I used to like. You know what? I think I might just turn my lights up and that can help too. More gain. We can just produce more light and get more gain. What a wild situation we're in. And my camera is running. You folks are there. I'll go back to the intro for a minute. We can start this again. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charles Martin. Welcome to COMP2300/6300. The two courses running together. We always got to get the slash out for those two courses. I'm just going to close my stream or stop trying to play it at the same time. It's distracting to watch myself. I'm just going to send a message to everyone on the team saying that we're starting now. So sound off in the chat. Send me a GIF. I tell you what, it's a lot of fun to do lecturing online, but sometimes there are some complexities. It certainly is easier just to stand in front of a group of folks and check out what they're doing in real time. Someone's still in their previous lecture. Listen, it can't be as engaging as this this super important content right now. I am recording, which is great, because it's good to have the recording to send to everybody out later. I'll just say it again. Welcome everyone to COMP2300/6300. The name of this course is Computer Organization and Program Execution. This course is running in many different ways this semester. We have online lectures, we've got in-person labs, we've got remote labs, we've got some people going in between because of their particular situations. But I think this is a course that everyone is going to enjoy, and I enjoy teaching this course so much. It is such a fun course to teach and to see you folks learning about it. And I'll tell you why it's a fun course to teach. Because this is your introduction to computer systems. And when I say computer systems, I mean learning how your computer actually works. Learning how a computer actually works. So all this time, you've been doing a lot of programming. You've probably done many different types of coding already in your first year subjects. If you're a CS student with us here at the ANU, you probably will have a someone's Spike's there with the GIF. I've got my that GIF somewhere to show you, Spike, but it'll be another day. The you've learned a lot about coding, but you might not have learned how your computer takes high-level programs that you've written in Java or Python or JavaScript and how it actually does stuff with it. How does it do stuff? When you make a variable in a programming language, where does it go? What does your computer do with it? How does it get it back later? How does it know which variables to use? Probably someone will say, well, it's probably stuck in memory somewhere. Well, how do we know where? And in this course, we find out. We actually will be looking at how a CPU runs a program in the tiniest detail that it's possible to, or a certain level of detail, the instruction level detail, instruction by instruction. And we'll be learning a bit about how CPUs are created, how a computer fits together, and how programs actually run, and the different things we have to think about in order to create programs that are expressive and handle real-world problems like we need to do every day. So there's a lot to learn in this course, but because it is this journey of discovery and how a computer really works, it can be pretty hard because computers are complicated and you have to sometimes be prepared to break your understanding that you've already built up in previous courses. Just break it a little bit to think about how to do it in this course. I like to think of previous courses as, this is going to sound a little bit derogatory, I like to think of them as Harry Potter programming. Harry Potter programming. You go into a previous course and your teacher says, well, when you want to do this thing, you want to have a loop, then you write these magic words down, okay? Just like in Harry Potter, they go into class and the teacher says, Wingardium Leviosa, right? You have to write down your magic words to make a program work the way you want to do it. But how does Wingardium Leviosa actually work? It's never explained in Harry Potter. It's magic, right? We don't need an explanation for it. But when you're doing computer programs, it's not magic. There is an explanation. You can know exactly why a for loop is the way it is. You can see exactly how instructions get repeated, how variables get incremented, exactly what's happening. So you don't need to do Harry Potter programming. You can do programming where you understand what's going on. It's a really transformative moment, and I hope that you are prepared to come on this journey with me and have that transformative moment when you learn about how computers actually work, how your program lines of code are translated into something that the CPU in your computer knows what to do with. It's going to be an exciting time. So I'll transfer to my right-hand side small scene, so I am small, and I will just say that I am speaking to you from my house in Cook in the ACT, not on ANU campus today, from the country of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples. And I want to acknowledge that the First Nations people of Australia have a history going back many tens of thousands of years before white people, before European colonists came to Australia and took their lands. I want to acknowledge that there was never an agreement made that European colonists should be allowed to use lands in Australia. They took them, and we've never resolved that. So we still have an open question in Australia about reconciliation, about why people with skin the colour of mine get to use the land in Australia, and why Aboriginal people had what happened to them happen, which was unfair and tragic. And that's an ongoing conversation. I want to acknowledge that pain. I want to acknowledge also that the Aboriginal people today do invite the descendants of European colonists to enjoy Australia as well, and I appreciate that. So I'll just acknowledge that we live in Ngunnawal and Ngambri country here in Australia, and also acknowledge the experiences of First Nations people around the world. So now to you I can say welcome. Whether you're at ANU campus, whether you're sitting in a lab watching on your computer, whether you're in Canberra, whether you're in the Murray BA building, sitting on one of those great couches watching this lecture right now. Whether you're streaming on Echo 360 the day before the exam, you're welcome to. Whether you're in your residence hall in isolation, whether you're waiting for the results of a COVID test, you're welcome to this course too. And also whether you're a long way away, whether you're in China, or you're in India, or you're in Singapore, or you're in Korea. I've heard of people from people in all of those places. You're welcome too. And we're trying to provide a wonderful experience this semester in COMP2300, 6300 for everybody, no matter where you are and no matter what your situation is. Because if we've learned one thing in the last 2 years, situations can change dramatically quickly, and we can be very resilient and move forward no matter what challenges we come up against. So, I've already introduced myself. I've given you my name. I've said that I work here at the Australian National University, but you probably don't know that much about me. Well, I'm two things I think of myself. I'm a computer scientist, and I love teaching computing, and I'm a musician. I perform on percussion instruments, and I perform on electronic music instruments, where I use my interest in computer science and my interest in music to create different kinds of performances. And that's my research background in music technology. So sometimes in this course, you'll find some of the topics might seem a little bit arty, if I may put it in such a way. And that's because I'm using my research background as a way to inform my teaching. All of my teaching is informed by what makes me me, which is my background as a musician, as a music technology researcher, as a performer, and I talk about this stuff in my lectures and in the assessment tasks, which are creative and expressive. So I hope that you appreciate that. It's research-led teaching in action in this course. And so the way that I understand computer systems is informed in some ways by that particular use case. Now, we're going to do a little bit of a course intro for the next, I suppose, half an hour or so, and then we will talk about the first topic, which is digital logic. So in this brief course introduction, we'll talk a little bit about some policies, about how lectures and labs will work, and it's just basically the starter information that you need to know in order to be successful in COMP2300. I hope that it's interesting. You'll get a feeling of the shape of the next 14 weeks that we'll spend together. But also it's information that you need to hear sometimes because it's me telling you an important thing about how this course will work. And if later on you haven't heard that, you might find that you are doing the wrong thing. So keep in mind that this is important information. You can look at it at the website as well if you need to read it in more detail. So, who's this course for? Well, anyone who wants to know how their computer really calculates 1 + 1, and what happens if in your computer if you run a high-level program, how and why computer science connects to the physical world. These are all really important ways to support your understanding of computing, and I hope that you engage with it and get really interested in it in the way that I am. I guess one thing to say is, well, asking a rhetorical question, who owns a smartphone? Well, literally everybody owns a smartphone. But I think a smartphone is a good example of a computer system which really sits strongly in the world. Sometimes when we think of computers, we think of them as abstract ideas, a server in a closet or a laptop that you use for certain tasks. But a smartphone lives in the world. It's got network connections all the time. It's got sensors. It's got interesting touch screen inputs. It's got this beautiful output from a screen. It's got speakers in it. It's connected to headphones all the time. People are listening to things. And it's a computer which is all about human inputs and outputs. And that's something we'll talk a lot about in this course, how inputs and outputs work in a computer and how the hardware of a CPU is designed to allow those to work when you're writing your software. Another important thing about a smartphone is that it runs a CPU design coming from a company called ARM. All the smartphones in the class will have ARM processors in them. They're particularly popular for smart devices. You probably have an ARM processor in your TV, You probably have one you might have one in your game console. You might even have one in your computer, depending on the kind of computer you're using. So they've become more popular in the last few years, even since I've been teaching this course. ARM processors have started to be used in regular computers. And in this course, we will be studying an ARM processor. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Here it is. This is the ARM processor we'll be using. In fact, this is a board. It's not a processor. Here's one. It's a microbit. What's a microbit, you might ask? Well, a microbit itself is this little board that has 25 little LEDs on the front. It's got 2 buttons. Boop, 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 boop. It's got some little pins down the bottom that kind of look like little teeth. It's got some attractive yellow colored triangles on that side. I guess this is a yellow one. They come in other colors. On the back of it, it's got a bunch of interesting stuff, little chips. Yeah, but inside the microboard, inside these little chips, what do we have? Well, actually, what we've got is a simple but complete computing system. It has a CPU, it has memory, it has interfaces. It's got a USB interface here. It's got a display on its LED, got some inputs with these little buttons. So it's a very simple, a very complete but simple system. It's much simpler, in fact, than the CPU in your laptop. It's much simpler than the CPU in your smartphone. It's low powered, so it can be powered by batteries. In fact, the CPU on this, or what I should say is the microcontroller unit, is actually the kind of microcontroller that you might put in a smart device, like a Fitbit or a simple smartwatch or a fitness tracker. So it's a very simple device, but the idea of the microbit is that it gives programmers or people a way of sending programs to that CPU to run, to learn about how to write programs. So this is an educational device. It's usually designed to be used by primary school kids. But in 2300, we use it in quite a different way. A primary school kid might use Python or use Scratch to program a little game on this using the screen and the buttons. We're going to use the language that's closest to the CPU instructions of the ARM CPU on this, which is called assembly language. So we're going to be designing programs in assembly language that use the screen, that use the buttons. They might use some of the pins here if we're lucky. They might use the network connection if we can figure that out. But this great little computer is going to be your companion during this course. And you're going to be spending all of your labs writing programs for the microbit, seeing how they work, and understanding how to take ownership of this little computer. So it's a computer you really understand. It's quite an interesting experience. I know that there are some folks out there who don't have a microbit yet. All of you who are in Canberra probably don't have a microbit. In your labs this week, the first thing you'll do is get a microbit off your tutor, who will take your name and give you one of these boards, and then it will be yours to keep. So you get to keep that for the whole course. For everyone who's not in Canberra, unfortunately, you're going to have to find your own microbit. We can't give one to you unless you come and get it. So if you haven't ordered a microbit already or tried to find one, please do it this week. Do it today. It's much more fun to do this course when you have a microbit, and in fact, you can't really do the assignments without it. So it's required equipment. What background knowledge is expected in this course? Well, the prerequisite of this course are the first year subjects, computing subjects. So we assume you know COMP2300, COMP2310 or their equivalents. We also assume you know some basic arithmetic and logic from Math 10005. And another thing which is really important is that you will be continuing to develop your skills with Git, the Git version control system. And that's something which you will have experienced in previous computing subjects. But certainly you will have to use it in this course. You will be expected to know it. So if I say clone a Git repository, we really expect you already know how to do that. This is a second year course now, not a first year course, so there will be a little bit less hand-holding in how to deal with your Git repositories. That said, if you can't get something to work, reach out on the forum or talk to your tutor about it in your labs. I said we were going to be programming in assembly, but I didn't say you needed experience. And in fact, you need 0 assembly programming experience. This is a primer in assembly. We will teach you from the beginning, starting next week. Lectures. Here's the lecture schedule. You made it to the first lecture, so that's great. You've done that. We have one from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Mondays. We have another one from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Thursdays. All the lectures will be online. They'll be streamed and recorded for you. The reason that I do online lectures is that I think that this is the way that I can get the best product to the biggest group of students. I know that I could have lectures in a hall this semester. We could do in-person lectures. I also know that only a few of you will really show up to those lectures in the hall. Many of the rest of you will watch them on Echo 360. And what I find is that the video output of a lecture in a hall is not great. It's not a good experience for everyone who is watching at home, particularly the remote students who can't be here. When I lecture it here in my office or at my home, I've got a studio, I've got lights, I've got a nice microphone, I can stream on YouTube, Twitch, and Microsoft Stream. I can archive on Echo 360, and it's a really understandable and watchable video for the majority of students. So I'm always trying to improve my lecturing, and if you have any thoughts about it, feel free to let me know. One point about lectures is that we do have a number of public holidays on Mondays here in Australia. So if you're a remote student, you might not be aware of them because you have your own holidays in your own country. But we have 3 this semester, which is a little bit annoying. But the reality is that I don't work on public holidays, just like no one at ANU works on public holidays. We will do a long lecture on Thursday, 9 to 11 on public holidays, and I'll have a 9 a.m. lecture on Tuesday mornings just to start off the week. So the schedule will just have to be different for those Monday holidays. So if you're watching this lecture right now and it's live, I hope that you have Microsoft Teams somewhere, because that's the way that I receive chat from you. If you want to ask a question in a lecture, jump onto Microsoft Teams and ask something. The lecture should be quite fun because we look at these slides, of course, we do live coding, a lot of live coding, and we have some chats in the Teams chat. Because it's a stream, I'm probably 30 seconds or you're 30 seconds behind me, so if I ask you a question, you probably will answer it and I'll be on the next slide, but it's okay, we work it out. It's just like any streaming setup. A really important part of this course is labs. My expectation is that you attend all of your lab sessions. So the reason for that is the labs are where you actually learn the material for this course. In the lectures, you listen to them, but in the labs, you apply the knowledge and you try to get things to work, and you fail to get them to work. And when you fail, there's a tutor right behind you to help you. So they're a really, really important experience. And my advice is that you don't miss any labs. We've gone to great lengths, and we will go to great lengths this semester to make sure that the labs are accessible and available for everyone who is wanting to attend. Just for a minute, I'm going to just have a look at the course website and show you the labs. You will have seen my message on Piazza today that the lab enrollments or registrations is open. You can see that we've got many, many groups. I think there's 19 lab groups, some online, some are dual delivery. For each dual delivery one, we have 2 separate small groups to join. Keep in touch if you have any issues with your labs. I know lab 1 is going to be a bit of a trial this week because everyone's getting their microbits, getting set up with the software. It will be a little bit slow, but it's a good chance to get to know your tutor and the people in your lab. If you haven't registered for a lab yet, please do it today. I need to see where there are issues with our registrations, and I can't see that unless you give it a try. If you have any issues, please ask us on Piazza. now. So I'm just going to mention a few things about online teaching. We actually won an award in this course for online teaching. So we love doing it in COMP2300. We've done it really successfully in the past, and if you are learning remotely, you will be well supported. If you find that you can't attend for some weeks because you're isolating or you get sick, then that's okay. We'll find a way for you to attend a remote lab. So there'll be lots of ways for you to engage with the online material in this course. In fact, you can go onto the website right now and see every lab's content if you want to. Some of them are a bit to do. We're updating the labs to work with the microbit because we've never used the microbit before in this course. You can also go and look at all of the lecture slides on the lectures page. And if you're interested in what's going to happen in this course, I encourage you to go have a look. If you're the kind of person that needs or wants PDF versions of all the lectures, you can go and download them from this link, where I've uploaded PDF files of every lecture, and you can use those to take notes or help you out. I will be updating the PDFs as we go through the course because I update my lecture notes regularly. So what about communication in this course? Well, the first and most important thing is the course website. The website, cs.anu.edu.au/courses/comp2300. It's not the wattle. We do use the wattle for online quizzes, but most of the information, all the lectures, all the labs are on the website. All of your assessment information is on the website. That's the first place to get information. But if you want to talk to me anytime during the week about anything, the best place to do that is the COMP2300 forum, which we host on Piazza. So I won't go to that now, but you should have connected to the Piazza. You should be invited. If you're not, click one of the links and register yourself in the class. That's where you can talk to me and the tutors during the week. Really, I expect that if you're not in your lab and it's not during a lecture and you need to know some information, ask a question on the forum. That's the place for you to ask questions. We're not accepting direct messages over Teams. You're not allowed to phone me up, or you can phone me up if you've got a very important issue, but really the best way to get information is the forum. Why is that? Well, the forum is the place where other students can see your questions and the tutors can see them too. Make sure you're checking the forum, the website regularly, and make sure that your emails, the forum sends you emails, so you get email notifications if there's an important message. If there's an important individual message, I will send you an email directly. Now, this is all to say that we have a don't email me policy in this course. The course forum is the place to ask questions. If you need to post, have a private question just for the teachers, post to instructors only on the forum. The reason for this is that my email inbox fills up very quickly and student messages get lost. If you ask on the forum, if it's a public question, other students will answer and then it stays around for their benefit. And if it's a question to all of your teachers, the tutors can help answer them as well. So you've got a lot more people looking at your questions on the forum than if you ask me an email. There are probably 400 of you and there's only one of me. So if people are asking me questions over email, they're really liable to get lost. The forum is the place to do it, where we have our 15 tutors helping out as well. Now, assessments. Everyone wants to know about assessments, and there's a typo in this page. I'll just go to the assessment page instead. There's a question already about the forum. That's a great question. Just going to see if I can track down that question on the FAQ. Tutors, can I send code to tutors lecturer? Look, this is about the assignments, and someone's asked what's the rationale about not being allowed to send code to the tutors lecturers. What we get sometimes is students who panic about their assignment and can't get it to work, and at the last minute they put all their code in a zip file and email it to me. And realistically, that's just not going to get you anywhere. You're not going to get an answer from me with a zip file full of code that doesn't work. And you're not going to get an answer from your tutors. You have to use, develop your skills for understanding what goes wrong with code, and develop your skills for asking questions that make sense in the forum, not just pack up your assignment and just throw it off the back of a bus and hope that your teachers fix it for you. So the rationale there is, first of all, help yourself. Try to understand what's going wrong with your code. Second of all, learn how to ask a question that doesn't just involve dropping all of your code on someone's doorstep and hoping they solve it for you. So that's the rationale there. It does happen that sometimes students panic, send me an email with their code, and I literally just don't have anything to say, right? That's like sending me an unfinished essay or sending me half a book, right? It's not a useful thing. I can't evaluate it. I don't have time to go into deep debugging sessions of students' code. There are better ways to approach that with your tutors and to get feedback when things go wrong in assignments, which they do. You've got lots of chances in this course to get feedback and get help. But dropping code in my inbox is not one of them. That was actually about email, not exactly the forum. If you're on the forum, go ahead, put a code snippet in the forum if you're trying to figure out how a targeted piece of code doesn't work. Just take a snippet and have a look at it, and you'll get lots of help. And also, it's really important at this stage just to say, better not to send your entire assignments to students. We have issues with plagiarism. If you send your whole assignment to other people, make it public, or post it on the forum, everyone else will see your code, and it kind of is likely that you're going to be involved in a plagiarism situation. There will always be a recordings for lectures. Someone's just asked, will there be recordings for lectures? Yes, there is a recording for the lecture. It will be up on YouTube as soon as the lecture is finished. It will be on Echo360 as soon as I upload it. We're going to talk about assessment. So many messages. Are there drop-in sessions? No, you've got a lab every single week of the course. We might have some drop-in labs for assignment help, but I haven't planned them yet. And it really depends on the situation and the demand. At the moment, our schedule is completely full of labs. As I said, we have 19 class groups. It's getting difficult to roster a time where there aren't class groups. One thing that you could do is, if you need drop-in help, is to think about the Computer Science Student Association. I know there's a CSSA Install Fest, which I've talked about on Piazza this week. Go to the Install Fest, talk to those folks. There are lots of people around to help you in a drop-in capacity, as well as our tutors in their labs. But we'll talk about the assignment drop-in sessions maybe later in the semester if those are warranted. Yeah, assessments, here they are. Look at all these assessments, how neat. Let's go backwards. Final exam, 30%. That's a big assessment task, isn't it? Obviously that will be in the final exam period in June. We have a mid-semester exam, 20%, which will be in the mid-semester exam period. We've got 2 assignments. One is due in week 11, and one is due at the end of week 6. And those 2 assignments are worth 20% each. So far, 2 exams, 2 assignments, we've covered 90% of the assessment for this course. 10% remaining. The 10% remaining is divided up into a lot of little things. And they're really things that are giving you recognition for tasks that you do during the semester, rather than having big, scary assessment tasks. So you will have some assessment in the labs, which will be worth 6%. Every lab is worth 0.5% of your final mark. There are 2 quizzes in this course, which will be on Wattle, and they'll be worth 1% each. And there will also be 2 labs, which will be dedicated to feedback on assignments. So assignment 1 proposal and assignment 2 proposal. So there's the week 5 lab. You'll get a session, a one-on-one discussion with your tutor about your assignment, and you'll get a mark for that. So I really want people in this course to be planning their assignments early, thinking about what they're going to do before they do it. So that's why you've got an assessment task, write a design proposal, take it to your tutor, and have a talk about it, 1%. So very simple assessment tasks, but very, very very, very useful for you to get that feedback. A few important thoughts coming in from the chat. Mid-semester exam, someone says, is it redeemable or not? No, it's not redeemable. The mid-semester exam is an independent assessment task. The final exam is an independent assessment task. They assess different things. The mid-semester exam will assess only things between weeks 1 and 6. And the final exam can assess the things, some of the things in weeks 1 to 6, but mainly things after that. Whoops. Sorry, folks. I have a bit of a croaky throat today. I have been tested, and it is not COVID, so thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, not a redeemable exam. I don't think that the redeemable exams are a very good idea, because it means that the final exam has to be way more stressful. If I make the mid-semester redeemable, the final exam then has to assess all the things in the mid-semester exam as well. I can't leave anything out of the final exam. So this way, you get a mid-semester exam that does some things, a final exam that does some other things. They're not the same, they're different tasks, and it means that you get an experience of moving through your assessment already, kind of smoothly over the semester. I have seen experience doing redeemable assessments before, and my experience has been that they don't benefit students as much as you might like them to. It's always a bit of a fallacy to say, oh, I'll do the work later, I'll do the hard work later at the end. No, the mid-semester exam is an important one. That means you have to focus the next 6 weeks and really engage with what we're teaching you. You've got a quiz there to help tune your knowledge, to get you some feedback about what's going on. You've got 6 labs full of great experience with your tutors to tune your knowledge. Someone says 30% final exams pretty pog. Pretty pog. I'm not sure what a pog is. In my day, that was a kind of little trading chip that you get in a packet of chips or something. But I think it's some kind of Twitch term. So thanks, Zoomers. Yeah, always scary to have half your grade hanging in the balance, even after 12 years of work. Absolutely. That freaks me out. I don't want you to have half your grade hanging in the balance. I want you to get most of your grade from where you do most of the work. That's the labs, the assignments, everything else. You do have this period in the exams, a really valuable period, where you've got about a week just to let the information sink in. And that's valuable too. So I don't want to have no exam, because I like you to be able to use that period to refresh your knowledge, revise it, and really get it to sink in, and then do your final assessment. But I don't want the final exam to be like the most huge thing that's going to dictate the rest of your life either. It's not. Having it 30% is fine. 30% is still a big assessment. I'm glad I got a laugh out of a few folks about my POG comments. You can see some details about the assessments here. Both exams will be on Wattle. They'll be the same for everybody. I will tell you about the lab tasks in a minute. I've just had a question. The quizzes will also both be on Wattle. There'll be more information about that as they appear, but the first quiz in week 4 will be on Wattle. It will be available anytime during that week. You can do it whenever you want. And duration as long as you need. It's not a timed exam, it's a quiz. So it's just an opportunity for you to tune your knowledge, get some feedback, and get a little mark for it. I assign marks to things that I think are important activities. Labs are an important activity. That's why we have a mark assigned to them. Let's talk about lab tasks. We don't mark attendance in the labs. If you don't go to your lab, that's it. That's your decision. You don't have to. I do mark the content of what you do in the labs, and the way we do that is that in each lab, you will see that there are lab tasks. I'm just going to open one as an example. Let's look at lab 2. That's got more clear tasks. Turn the volume up on my side. I'm afraid I've got some kind of thing with my volume in OBS where my input is like at maximum on my input microphone input, but the output is not maximized. I'm going to have to tune that offline. I'm sorry, this is as loud as I can go. You might just have to turn up the volume on your speakers. You'll see task 1, you do something, and then at the end of the task there'll be instructions about what to do in task 1. The instructions will say something like, copy your solution from task 1 into task1.s, a program file. And then when you commit and push your lab to GitLab, you'll see a tick in the CI job which recognizes that you've done task 1. So you'll be submitting your assignment, your labs in that way. You'll be putting your lab work sorted by task into a different file and uploading it to GitLab. Then at the end of week 3, you will, all of that work will be submitted on GitLab. We'll take a copy of it and give you a mark. For all of the lab assessments, the way the marks work is you get 50% credit for getting started and you get 100% credit for doing all the tasks. All the required tasks, not the extra tasks. There are always some extension tasks to do. It's not designed to be hard. It's actually just recognizing that you tried everything and you did the learning you gained by doing it. So it's going to be a little bit, I'm sorry, there's some various messages about volume coming in. So it's a little bit mechanical. You have to learn how to put things into specific files so we can see it later, but it shouldn't be a terrible experience. One important thing about the lab tasks is that they're due in 4 packs during the semester. So pack 1 is at the end of week 3, first 3 labs. Pack 2 at the end of week 6, end of week 9, end of week 12. And I'll remind you about those. That means that if you miss something in lab 2, you get a bit of extra time just to shape it up. So I encourage you to make sure you've finished all your lab tasks and you get the maximum credit for those bits of work you've done. I know that not everyone can finish tasks during the lab. Sometimes people need a bit more time to think about it. So this is why we're kind of separating the lab work from the particular experience of that moment. When you're in your lab, I want you to focus on first doing the tasks, but also talking to your tutor, getting feedback. And that's the best way you learn while doing those tasks. Not worrying about ticking yourself off on attendance or something. What else have we got here? Assignment pre-submission. This will be in those 2 particular labs. You will need to start by forking and cloning the assignment repo. That will be available in the coming weeks. And you'll fill in a design proposal text file that outlines what your plan is for this assignment, and then you'll submit it. Now, this might be confusing because you might be thinking, why am I being asked to write what my plan is for the assignment? Obviously, my plan is to complete the assignment questions. Well, you haven't done COMP2300, and I'm afraid that in COMP2300, our questions in the assignments ask you to come up with a design for a microbit program. You'll have to use your creativity and your expressive sense of creating computer programs to make something interesting within certain parameters. So there'll be many, many solutions that meet our specification, and hopefully we get many different ideas from you in our design pre-submission proposal sessions. We'll talk more about the assignments later, but this is not going to be like question 1, sort a list of numbers. Question 2, make a for loop. That's not the assignments in this course. It's going to be much more interesting and expressive than that, and it will require you to be a little bit creative and take the time to think about a design that's really going to work. That's why we provide this feedback session for you. Now, I've gotten way off my lecture now. No set texts. If you look at the books and links page on the website, we've got heaps of great stuff. In particular, for the early parts of the course, have a look at Ben Eder's YouTube channel. If you haven't seen this, Ben Eder is an absolutely fantastic computer science teacher on YouTube. He makes great videos that are really related to the early parts of COMP2300. They'll really help you to understand what's going on about digital logic. So go and have a look at that. Academic integrity. This is important stuff to mention at this point. The assignments in this course are strictly individual. Strictly individual. That means that If you use any code in your assignment that you did not write, you must indicate what that code is and where it came from in your assignment. We provide a special file called Statement of Originality where you can say, this snippet of code came from this website, or this snippet of code came from a discussion with my friend Jeffrey. If you do that, that means that it's just like citing some text in an essay. I'm not going to give you credit for code you didn't write, but you're not in trouble if you use some code from somewhere else and you explain to me that it was someone else's code. So if you do submit code that isn't yours and you haven't clearly indicated that that code has come from somewhere else, there's a word for that, which is plagiarism, because in all the assignments, you are submitting work and saying, this is my work. I created this code, I created this computer program. And if it turns out that you didn't create all of it, you're taking someone else's work and claiming credit for it, that's the definition of plagiarism. So we take this seriously because we have to have a sense of integrity within our student body. I know that most of you take this seriously as well. And if you're the kind of person who's like, well, I would never do that, then that's great, don't worry. But I know there are people out there who do get in their assignment in the last minute and they panic and they find something online and just copy and paste it in and say, oh, I hope that works. Look, the outcome of that can be way worse than the prospect of getting a low mark. It could be way worse to be involved in an academic integrity investigation than to get a low mark in an assignment. So please don't do that. If you do use any code that's not yours, please indicate what it is. In this course, there's not that much code on the internet available in assembly that runs on microbits, so it's on you to really just not take code off your friends and claim it's yours. But the reality is that you need to have the integrity, if you do use someone else's code, to put a marker on it, comment, and list it in your statement of integrity, statement of originality, I mean. There's a few questions coming up. When I say you don't get credit for code you didn't write, would you be hurt if large chunks of your code came from Stack Exchange? You would probably get 0, more likely. If most of the code in your assignment came from Stack Exchange, you would get 0. Look, if you know, there are only a few cases where this has happened. It happens in another course I run where sometimes students take quite a bit of code from an example and then just do a bit of extra stuff around the edges. But the situation then is that I say, well, what is your contribution to the assignment and what came from somewhere else? And if your contribution gets you to a P, okay, a P. If it doesn't get you to a P, then it's like less than that. If it gets you a credit, cool. If it was an amazing assignment and you just used a little bit of code on the edges, maybe it's still an amazing assignment, but it's important just to be honest about it. Basically, as someone has now said, I think it will hurt because your code should answer the question. Your code should meet the basic spec. It's not like I delete the code and check it without it, but just we make a judgment. It very rarely happens in this course because ARM assembly code isn't very common, so we don't find it on Stack Exchange. Someone's asked about lab capacities. They are set on streams. They may increase if there's particular demand for particular times, but I wouldn't hold your breath. We have a finite resource of tutor hours. The tutors literally can't work any more than they work sometimes. Some of the rooms have a size limitation. The room size is marked at 25 for the rooms we use. That means that for an in-person lab, if I've got 2 tutors and 1 visitor, I need to have 22 because I can't have more than 25 people in the room at the ANU at the moment. So that's my limitation I'm working with. If the rules change, I will update those capacities, but at the moment, I think there are probably still spaces in other labs. I'd be looking at what labs you can attend rather than looking at the ones that are full, thinking, oh, I wish I could go to that one. Oh, the plagiarism spectrum. Yeah, I know plagiarism is a big word and it means a lot of things. But there's obviously a really bad kind of plagiarism where someone just pays someone else to do an assignment. Oh, that's very bad. Or a skull and crossbones for that one, right? No one would do that. I mean, I trust all of you folks. Buying, stealing, or borrowing others' work. Like the borrowing thing, sometimes people say, oh, I just borrowed it from my friend. Well, it's in the same category as buying or stealing. Like you've taken another assignment someone else has done and done that. So that's really bad stuff, deliberate plagiarism. Sometimes folks copy work from a source without a citation. That's what I see more often. Something that's come from Stack Exchange or borrowed from another student, or they got an idea from a friend and just copied in their assignment and they didn't put in their statement of originality. That's what I would call poor practice. Poor practice can still result in an academic integrity investigation. So be careful with that. In the middle somewhere is this one I see a lot of, working with other students to complete an individual task. In our assignments, I really expect everyone to have a different solution. So it's pretty obvious if people have worked together and they come up with the same thing. Whoops. This is our pledge of integrity at the ANU. You're committed to, reading the course policy, obeying the ANU statement of honesty and plagiarism, and you're aware of the consequences of it. It's not a serious thing, but we sort of ask that you look at this and consider it as part of your education. Now, course reps. Course reps are a thing that you have to nominate yourself for. So if you want to be a course rep, I'll put a message on the Piazza, unless I already did it, I've forgotten it right now, but there's a form for nominating yourself as a course rep. A course rep has a couple of meetings with me over the semester. They meet with our senior academics who handle the education across the school and the college, and they're a really important way of getting feedback from the student body. So it's a great thing to do. I know a lot of people who've been course reps and had a great experience, and I really love talking to them. So please have a look, and if you feel like you'd like to be a course rep, just volunteer, fill in the nomination form. My expectations of you in this course. I expect that you regularly read the website, you engage with the course material, and you attend your labs and get to know your tutor, and that you act with integrity. You can expect from me that I will provide help through my tutors when you ask ahead of time. I'll provide a really great course website. I hope you like it. We put a lot of effort into making it good. And I'll care about you. I do care about you. Even though there are a lot of you, I care about all the students in my classes. And I'm always interested when I hear from students having interesting experiences. And I always try to help when I hear from students having trouble. So if you find there's anything giving you trouble, ask on the Piazza. If it's a personal issue that can't go on the Piazza, there's really only a few of those, send me an email. I find that I'm able to help almost everybody who has a problem in a course. There are people who have life issues that mean that their assignments or exams get into trouble. They often tell me about these beforehand, and I'm able to take an action which means that they get a great chance to do their assessment and not conflict with their life issue. Sometimes these life issues can be quite bad, so things happen to people when there's enough people in the same semester. Things could happen this semester with people getting sick, and if that happens to you, please tell me about it so that we can help adjust your course experience to get the most out of your education, even if you're sick. Here's a pop quiz. Where do I find the assessments, the lectures, the labs, the late submission, or academic misconduct policies? They're all on the website. All the information's on the website. We also have some info on programs and courses, which should be appearing later today, which basically is a version of the website in PDF. The one important thing here is that the late submission policies is that we don't accept late submissions. So other courses, other colleges, other departments might have a 5% per day policy. No, we don't have a 5% per day policy. No late submissions accepted. If you find that you need to, or you can't do your assignment on time, talk to me and arrange an extension, okay? Extensions are the ways we do things. We don't do late submissions with 5% per day. So that's a communications thing. You have to come and talk to me about it, but we can usually make it happen if there's a good reason. We mainly use ARM v7 assembly in this course. You'll do a little bit of C, but we'll have lots of different examples in the slides. Now we get to a little break. Please in the chat, I know I've got a few chatters. I'm really pleased to see a few folks in the chat. It's great to have folks engaging so early. Answer one of these questions. Tell me, or tell each other, either one weird food about yourself, one weird food that most people hate but you enjoy, and a boring fact about yourself. We're going to spend 5 minutes doing this, and then we'll go on to digital logic in a minute. I'm going to get some more water actually, so you can put the things in the chat, and I'll be back in a minute. I'm just going to turn my volume down. Whoops. Alrighty, where are we up to? That was a few things. Oh, some good things. Someone plays CSGO. That is a boring fact. Everyone plays CSGO. Except for me, I don't play CSGO. I only play Zeldas. Somehow, that's just... I'm just moving into the specific one game line. Olives are legit bangers. Pickles. Pineapple on pizza. It's not that weird, but it's certainly a controversial food. I talk to myself while thinking. I do that too. Jacob Weston Davis, yeah. Someone likes licking their fingers. I'm not sure if that's something you talk about in public. It doesn't seem wrong, it just seems weird to talk about it. Crippling video game addiction. You should get help, whoever that is. Oh dear, if it's crippling and it's an addiction, that's where we have professional help. Laying in bed lifeless on a hot day. Fruit tea is really boring. Oh no. Sorry about that. I'm allergic to mango. I'm not such a huge fan of mango, but you know, not the best one. Not the best fruit in my view. Someone's boring fact is just rickrolling us. Pretty good. Someone is, with the rickroll, they're in for some negative emojis with that one. Well, I'm glad we can have a bit of a talk break. Where are we at with the slides? Oh, questions. We're done with the slides. So that was the intro deck. And now we get the digital logic deck. Here we go. I'll just get another tab open so I know where it is. Where's that tab? Blah, 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 blah. Oh man, there's a lot of slides here. Maybe I bit off more than I could chew. Web. So is everyone with me so far? I see I've got a lot of people having a look on Charles Mug. Why, yes, do you like my mug? Gotta have the Charles mug. We should have official merch of 2300. I feel like courses, even a big course like this, is something where you could have merch, because a lot of it is this crazy journey of togetherness. It's almost, I mean, I'm still teaching these courses. It's quite addictive to teach them because there's such a group of people all going together through this big goal, and it's a huge amount of work to teach, but it's kind of fun to see everyone go on this journey of discovery together. Someone's interested in finishing this course. I'm interested in having you finish too, so that's great. All right, digital logic, here we go. Here we go. Week 1, Boolean algebra. This is week 1, lecture 1, part 2. We have 3 digital logic topics today: Boolean algebra, combinational logic, and the other one, procedural logic? No, I've forgotten the word now. Sequential logic, sorry. Whew, too many logics. The reason we talk about these things is because it relates to how data works on a computer and how a CPU is made. So these are really important foundational topics, but we don't go into a huge amount of detail. Boolean algebra is something you've probably heard of before. You've probably heard of this guy, George Boole. George Boole was a mathematician, and he had investigations on logic and probabilities, and had this idea about how logic would work, where you would just represent it with a formalized algebra of 2 values, true and false. So up and down, 2-valued algebras. Rather than the regular numbers we use, which would have many values, he was formalizing an algebra just with 2 numbers. So what is an algebra? Well, an algebra is when you get together mathematical symbols and rules and entities like numbers, and you have rules for manipulating the symbols. You've got variables that you might have seen, things like a and b we use as variables, or x and y in your maths class. And we often have operators. If you're in a regular maths class, or maybe a high school maths class, your operators might have been plus, minus, divide. Maybe if you're doing calculus, you've got the sum symbol. This one, whoops, I'm in black. Let's change to a red texture. You might have, whoops, uh-oh. Oh, I got my red, but okay, phew. I thought my slides had broken. You might have different kinds of operators in more advanced maths classes, but in Boolean algebra, Boolean maths, you've got these operators: the binary AND symbol, this little hat, a binary OR symbol, or a V kind of shape, a NOT symbol. There are other ways of representing that, but this is a unary operator that means not A. Not A. And those are our operators. So the Booleanness means that all the variables and expressions only take 2 values. So every variable, A, it can only be one of 2 things, 1 or 0, or false and true, or anything else, up and down, moon and sun and sky, stars and void of space, Jupiter and Mars, right? It doesn't matter any 2 things, they're just 2 values. and we just have different names for those possible values. And the algebra part, oh no, sorry, I don't want to write on my person. I gotta write over here. Someone pointed that out to me. Thank you for putting in something in the chat. There was the A being 0 or 1. Boolean algebra is about building expressions with the variables and the operators like this. And you would read this as follows: not, in brackets, A and B, or C. So that's a Boolean algebra expression. It's got some variables that can either be 1 or 0. It's got some operators and or, and not. And it's got some brackets, which we use, or parentheses, which we use in the same way as maths. So this is revision. You've probably seen this in Math 10005. You might have seen it in any other maths course you might have taken in high school. It might just be very boring general knowledge for you. So we're going to keep moving quickly. Truth tables, you've probably seen before. The idea of a truth table is writing out all the possible values of all of the numbers in your logic, all of the variables, or in your expression, sorry. So if you've got an expression A and B, this is the important one here. This has two variables, A in there and B in there. So we're going to write out all of the possible values of A and B, T, T, F, F, T, F, T, F, so both being true, one being true, the second one being true, and both being false. And then we can work out the values of A and B there. So A and B is true if and only if A is true and B is true. Otherwise it's false. Why is this important? Well, it's useful with Boolean algebra to take advantage of the fact that we only have two values for each variable. That means that for any statement in Boolean algebra, you can have a complete description of what every variable is going to be, right? And that means you can completely work out the value of a more complicated expression of these variables in this table form. Of course, truth tables will get longer. If you've got 3 variables, they become much longer. You've got to have every combination of every one of those 3 variables. You've got 2 to the power of 3 rows instead of 2 to the power of 2. This one has 4 rows. If it was 3 values, you'd need 8 rows. If it was 4 values, you'd need 16 rows. So they get long depending on the number of variables. Other handy things. I'm on the right thing, yeah. I'm in small, right? Small mode. Whoops. Just going to check my OBS settings. Small. One of my tutors is like, help with the labs. I'm not going to help you right now. I'm lecturing the class right now. Other handy Boolean operators. These ones are made up of the existing ones, and, or, and not. We've got one called A implies B. It's also called not A or B. We've got one called A is equivalent to B, A and B, or not A and not B. We've got one called A exclusive or B. That means A is true or B is true, but not both and not neither. And we've got not A and B. Not A and B is called NAND, is equal to not A or not B. And not A or B, which is NOR, is not A and not B. Now, these 2 last ones are interesting. NAND and NOR. They're called universal Boolean operators because you can represent any Boolean expression using only NAND and NOR operators. It's useful in a reason we'll find out a bit later, but when we move to the computer part of this topic. But for the moment, just remember that NAND and NOR are universal operators. Logic functions. Now you know about functions in maths, right? So here's a 2-argument function. You've got x, you've got y, both are in the reals. What's the meaning? Someone says, what's the meaning of equivalent here? Its equivalent is going to be a new operator specifically designed to mean this. Equals in this example means that these expressions are the same. That's too small, isn't it? These expressions are the same. Equivalent means the truth value of A and the truth value of B are the same. A and B aren't, they're not the same expressions. They're equivalent by truth value. That's a specific meaning. Any other questions about this stuff? Equivalence, the equals is interesting here because the equal sign is outside of the algebra. The algebra only exists with these symbols. Or and not implies exclusive or and equivalent. So you can say, you can have an equivalent symbol within an algebra expression of Boolean algebra, but you can't have an equal sign. The algebra is different from the equality part. The equal sign is kind of at a meta level. So, sorry, it is a bit confusing, isn't it? But it's just a different type of symbol for a different situation, a different type of thing. But it means the same kind of thing, equivalence, equality. They could be used as a comparison operator. Now, functions in maths. You know about functions. You've seen things like f of x and y equals x squared times sine y. We're not going to do those today. We're going to look at functions of Boolean variables. So here's an example of one. G is the name of the function. A is going to be a Boolean variable. B is going to be a Boolean variable. And we could fill in a function that does something Boolean-ish. A or B, in brackets, not A, right? I just made something up, right? It's just a function where the variables are Boolean variables. And instead of using times and exponents and sign operators like you would do in maths, you can only use the operators from Boolean algebra. So here's a little chat, a question for you. Can you think of anything we can do with a Boolean function g a of b, a and b, that we can't do with the real valued function f, x, and y? What do you think? What can we do with Boolean functions that we can't do with real valued functions? Ooh, someone said we can negate a Boolean function. That's right, you can use Boolean algebra operators with Boolean functions. You can't do that in real values. Someone says, well, why don't we restrict the values of the reals to just 2 values and make it Boolean? But then it wouldn't be the reals, would it? You'd be restricting the values. What about this? How many different values can f, x, and y have? How many different values can f, x, and y have? Does that question even make sense? Like, it can be 0, it can be 0.5, it can be 100, it can be 12.637. Like, it's got infinite values, doesn't it? We don't have any boundary on how many values it can have. But this one, well, the maximum number of values it can have is 2. True and false. And in fact, we can work out exactly all of the possible input values. That only has 4 possible inputs with 2 possible output values. So these functions, the Boolean ones, can be kind of completely described or completely specified in advance. Whoops, sorry about my tablet handwriting, which is a bit dodge. There's some exciting ideas from here in the chat about how to restrict the domain of the reals to create a Boolean algebra out of numbers. I would suggest that when you do that, when you succeed, you've just redefined Boolean algebra. So it may not be that much of a useful operation to do that. Here's a a kind of funky truth table that has a lot of different interesting applications. This gives us a lot of ways of understanding all of the possible operations together. So the inputs are here. This row has input, the two operation table. This is A being true, B being true. That means that the false constant is false. A and B are going to be true. Not A implies B is false. The identity is true. Not A or B and B is false. Right? So the idea of this table, it's very confusing one. You'll have to look quite carefully. The idea here is that each of these functions of two values is completely described by this table. So we've got all the information that's possible. We can also describe a lot of things in NAND form. We've got the NAND descriptions of them down here. So what does this have to do with my microbit? You might be saying, this is crazy. What are we talking about here? Are we doing maths again? I thought we were doing microbits and I was really excited about that. But the reason that we talk about this is that computers are made of Boolean algebra things and combinational logic functions. Because we've got these things we call a logic gate in a computer, which is what makes the CPU actually work. And one of the basic kinds of logic gates is this one, the NAND gate. What's a NAND gate? Well, it's a physical technology. It's an engineering device. You've created in a silicon chip, these little combinations of etchings in the silicon that have certain electrical properties that allow you to run a voltage into certain parts of it. And if you have the input voltage being on representing 1 and off representing 0, you can represent a NAND gate. So Q here will have the property of not and A and AB, A NAND B. So the NAND gate is a really important one. You can make other gates in computing, in silicon, but typically what happens is that we just use NAND gates and all of the other gates are made up of NANDs. Exactly, we only make one kind of gate, NAND gate. Look, I'm not a CPU engineer, and if someone in the audience stands up and says, well, I make NOR gates, I only make XOR gates in my CPU or something, I would have to take their word for it. Not being a engineer in that kind, I can't provide that kind of detail, but I do know that broadly speaking, CPUs are made of NAND gates, and these, we construct all of the other gates from NANDs. So A not Q, well, the NOT gate is going to be a NAND with the two inputs tied together. A and Q, you can, or A and B, you can string two NANDs together with the NOT connected in the middle. A or B, you can get three NANDs together. AX or B, you can get four NANDs together. So if you just have that one type of design, you can make all of the other logic gates. Now, we get to our really important question for the day. This is the question that I want to answer today. And this is a big one, so seriously hard stuff here. How does your computer add 1 plus 1? How does your computer add 1 plus 1? And I might ask, how would a 5-year-old add 1 plus 1? I think if a kid had to add 1 plus 1, you'd say, well, I've got 1 microbit, and I've got 1 microbit, and I put them together, and now I've got 2 microbits, 1, 2. So you probably count with fingers or count with objects or something. Probably not, probably not using memory registers, probably not using NAND gates. The computer has to do this somehow. We know that we can make logic gates in a computer, so probably we're going to use those gates to somehow add 1 and 1. So let's have a little bit of a think. How how would we say that we represent numbers in a computer? And given that we've got these different logic gates that have a two-valued algebra associated with them, probably a sensible choice is to represent numbers in binary. And in fact, that's the way that things work in a computer, binary. So here I've got this list of 3 number representations. Decimal, that's our normal numbers. Hex and binary. I'll talk about hex in a minute, but we'll talk about binary. If I just type a number in here, maybe my head's in the way, but I've typed in 24, and we get, from the right, 3 zeros and 2 ones in binary. Type in 16, we get 4 zeros and a 1. And we've also got hex as well. You just have to wait a minute about the hex. How do binary numbers work? Is that something you've learned already? I think you probably have a little bit about binary numbers, but I'll just explain it. When you've got a binary number, suppose we've got a 4-bit binary number. Whoops. Oh, is this someone's astounded by my slides? I will show you the reason is that these slides are a website. They're on the course website, and it has a JavaScript widget for the different number representations. JavaScript. Someone made this. I think Ben Swift, one of my colleagues, made this back in the day when he was lecturing this course. So isn't that cool? Numbers that update in real time. Where was I? Talking about binary, how it works. Here we go, make a binary number. We usually define a binary number, or just write it down by saying OB to start with. And we've got we're going to do a 4-bit binary number with 4 places. Now, when you learned numbers in primary school, you probably learned like that this was the ones place, this was the tens place, this was the hundreds place, right? 990, 9 tens, and 9. And that's the thousands place. In binary, here's the ones place, the twos place, the fours place, and the eights place. So if I have a number like 3, it's going to be made of a 2 plus 1. So we get a 2 and a 1. If I get a number like 8, I'm going to erase my 1 and my 2. Whoops. And I will put a 1 in the 8's place. If I've got a 4-bit number, the maximum number I can represent is 15, which is going to be OB 1111. Let's just check it out. I'll put in decimal 15, 1111. Now, hexadecimal is a convenient way of reading binary numbers. Very convenient, because binary numbers are very long. Very, very long. If you have a binary number that's even a reasonable size, it's likely to have like 32 places like this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 4 places. It's convenient to group these into groups of 4 and then represent them with a hexadecimal number. And hexadecimal numbers go up to F. We count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. And in decimal, that's 15. Now the reason that hex is handy is because that represents a 4-bit binary number, right? So we can take each 15 is OB1111. Each group of 4 bits within the binary number can be represented by one hexadecimal number. It's not particularly convenient to convert between hex and decimal. It's not too hard to convert between decimal and binary, but it's easy to convert between binary and hex because you can just look at the group of 4 and work it out. Like, if I, whoops, I'm still in my typing mode. I'll type in OXFF. It's got 2 groups of 1111. A is 1010, and that's 1010, 1010. Now, here's a question for you. how do you pronounce, whoops, how do you pronounce this number? OXF7. And if you, I don't know how to pronounce it, but if I had to argue, I would say it should be pronounced 77. Someone just said OXF7. But how are you going to say it to your tutor in your lab? Just say each character? That's no fun. 77, I think, is right. What's the idea of the first number? Could you specify what you mean by first? Ah, yeah, the first number. No. That means this number is binary. And this means this number is hex. So someone has, yeah, OX means this is a hexadecimal number. OB means this is a binary number. And it's really important to remember that, because when you're using these numbers in programming, and you will do that this semester a lot, you'll use hex a lot and you'll use binary a lot. You need to be able to tell your programming language, this is a hex number. It's not a binary number. It's not a decimal number. So usually in programming, you'll just type 247. That just means a regular decimal number. If you type OX A7, your programming language will be like, oh, it's a hex number, right? Normally, if you just type XAF into a programming language, it'll think you've got a string without the quote marks, right? But if you've got OX, it knows that it's hex. And if you've got OB, it knows that it's binary. Yep, really important. Where was I? We were talking about how to add 1 and 1. So our computer is going to represent these numbers in binary. We've got a lot of binary digits there. 32. Whoops, still got that reply. Why the identifier has 2 characters. Yeah, it's probably there's differences between programming languages there. But the gold standard absolute normal thing is OB or OX. And that's what you'll use in assembly, so there you go. How do we add 2 numbers together? So with starting point, we've got our binary numbers. So we want 1 plus 1, and let's work this out. If we have 2 inputs for 1 plus 1, our plus function has 2 inputs, we're going to have to make a truth table of 2 binary digits, which will be represented by truth values, or 0 and 1. So there's our first input and our second input. And then our output is going to be the sum of 0 and 1. Ooh, someone's talked about negative values. Naughty, we'll talk about that on Thursday, I think. Negative numbers is very important in this course. We're doing 1 plus 1, guys. Just keep with me, folks. Your sum is going to be, if the inputs are 0 and 0, your sum is 0. If your inputs are 0 and 1, your sum is 1. So far, so good. 1 and 0, it's going to be 1. Okay. 1 and 1, it's going to be 2. Now, here's a problem. We don't have a way of representing 2 in binary so far. We don't have a way of representing it in Boolean algebra. So what we need to think of in terms of Boolean algebra is, how can we represent the next digit up along in our number? So right now, we're only looking at this first digit in a number. We've got a 1-bit number. So we're going to have A as our input, B as our input, S, they're all 0. If either one of the inputs is 1, we'll have 1 as the output. If both inputs are 1, we want to say the output should be 0, carry the 1. Just like when you're adding in decimal numbers in primary school, you had to carry the 10 to the next row. So we're going to make a machine which can add one column of binary numbers at a time and move the extra to the next row along, carry the 1. So we do that with a carry column, C. So here's our inputs. And here's our outputs. So A, 0, all zeros if their inputs are 0. If either A or B are 1, we get 1 in the sum column. And if they're both 1, we get a 1 in the carry column. Now we've got our truth table. So what we can do is create a logic function, a combinational logic function that represents these values. Once we have a combinational logic function, we can make it out of NAND gates. Whoops. Just so I remember, I think I've said this already, a bit stands for a binary digit. So all of the bits in your computer, 1 and 0, they're really just they're a digit, but they're a binary concept, truth and false, or up and down, or high voltage or low voltage. So we're going to make two logic functions, two combinational logic functions. One is going to be for the sum, that's S, A, and B. And the other one is going to be for the carry, C, A, and B. On and off, that's right. Up and down, yes and no, left and right, red and green. Now, one way, if you have a truth table, you can follow some mechanical procedures to create a logic function that defines that table. And one of the ways is to use this process called min terms. And a min term is defined as terms that OR together. Whoops. Someone's asking me what happens if we add some really big numbers together. Look, we're going to start with 1, and then we'll get to the big ones on Thursday. It's a really good question, though. I'd love to go in depth in the answer, but literally this entire week is just about numbers. So we're just going to take it slow and really understand how the low ones work first. Terms that OR together are called min terms. So you can look in your truth table for the output, we're looking at S right now, and find all of the times that the output is 1, and then look at what the inputs were. So the input here is not A and B. That's the input. And the input here is A and not B. And that means that we can represent this one as not A and B, or A and not B. So it's a way of creating a function out of a truth table. For the carry, we've only got one min term, A and B. And this kind of makes sense now, right? I think I've probably got a slide where this is written out. Oh, here we go. A and not B. That's A and not B, or not A and B. So those two situations mean that our sum should be 1, and the situation where the carry is 1 is only the situation where both A is true and B is true. Now we know we can go back to our list of all of the different Boolean algebra operations and observe that this one is the same as the exclusive OR operation. A, X, OR, B. All right, so far so good with our sum. We've got our logic functions now, so now we can create it with digital logic. What we've learned so far is this word called combinational logic, which lets us make a Boolean expression for any truth table. That was the min terms thing, ORing min terms together. And the Boolean algebra part lets us simplify Boolean expressions to something more manageable. So this part, that was combinational logic. And this part where we transform this into that simpler term is Boolean algebra. Now we can make something out of XORs and ANDs, a half adder. So we've got two outputs. We're going to have two little sections that make those outputs work. I'm going to make it in this little thing called DLS, the sandbox. You can have a look at this link and start playing around with different logic circuits if you want. Yeah, it is pretty cool. Thank you. And I can remember now, I always forget the symbols. I know I've got A and B for my carry, so I'm going to have an AND gate. Where's my OR gate? Is that XOR? Yeah, that's the one. I'd say hands up if you always forget the logic symbols, but in my room I would just be the only one with my hand up, so I'm just going to say hands up, I always forget the logic symbols. If your value function for how cool someone is that they can always remember the logic function symbols, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to achieve the coolness award for you. Right now, what am I doing? I'm making a system for adding two numbers together. These are numbers, 0 and 1, 0 and 1. That's going to be 0, and then the outputs are there. Hand is up. Someone's hand's up. Thank you. What do we do about addition between negatives? Oh my gosh, we're going to get to negatives soon. It's really, negatives are going to blow your mind, folks, so just keep hanging on. I love that I'm getting these questions because it shows that you're thinking 2 steps ahead of me, and that shows that you're really engaged. So thank you for folks asking questions saying, what about big numbers? What about negative numbers? Oh my gosh, my brain's exploding. How am I going to deal with these concepts? We're just dealing with one bit right now. This one is going to be our sum bit, and this one's our carry bit. So if we've got input O being 1, our sum bit's 1, because it's 1 XOR 0. If input 1 is 1, it's 0 XOR 1, that's also 1. If they're both on, we've got a 1 there in our carry bit, and this one has now turned off. So we just made a 1 and 1 adding situation. We could call this one 2. 1 plus 1 equals 2. We did it. We designed a computer system using logic circuits to do 1 plus 1 equals 2. You know, give yourself a round of applause, give yourself a pat on the back, as people sometimes do. Have a look at this website, the DLS Sandbox, Digital Logic Sandbox. It's really cool to see how you can create these different situations. There's lots of presets down here. Look at all this stuff, I don't know. You can make a whole computer with this. Pixel display, you can do really complicated things. A library of custom components. I'm getting some applause here, so thank you. Now that is pretty cool, I would say. And we can move on. We've got a bit of time left. We're going to get to the end of or take the next stage with our adder. We've done the half adder demo. Everyone did great. Yeah, floating point numbers. Someone said floating point numbers must nuke our minds. You know, I'm a bit sad. We don't actually do floating point in this course. We used to. Back in my day, I was actually a student at ANU in various times. And when I was doing my PhD, I was a tutor for COMP2300. And at that time, we did do floating point numbers, but we don't do them now because we have so much to cover in dealing with the microbit hardware. We don't really have time for that. The full adder, we've done what's called a half adder, which can it's only doing half the job. Why is it only doing half the job? It's not paying attention to, well, we've got this carry out, carry the 1 to the next column, but we can't do anything with it because we don't have any way to input that. So this is actually wrong. What about carry out? What about carry in? We got carry in, out. We don't have carry in. So we actually need a 3 input system. A for the first input, B for the second input, and carry in, CI, for if there was a lower binary digit that's already been added and it wants to send a carry to us, we need to look after that as well. And then we have the same outputs, S and C, O, carry out. Now you can see because we've got 3 inputs, this is out and this is in. Sorry about my scrolling, but you know, it's really fun to scroll with the tablet in these lectures. We've got 8 rows now because we've got our 3 inputs. 2 to the power of 3 is 8. That means we've got quite a bit more work to do because as you can see, you know, there were only a couple of min terms to deal with before. 1, 2, 3, 4 we got now instead of 2, and over here we've got 4. So it's going to be more complicated to assemble our logic functions from these, from this truth table. And that's why I've done it for you already. I've got the min terms for S. There's one, there's one, there's one, there's one. This one is not A and B and not CI. That's this one. They're in the wrong order. What am I doing? A, not B, not CI. A, not B, not CI. Down here we got not A, not B, and CI. A, B, CI all together. So that's our S min terms. And then, you know, we can do some Boolean algebra. You go back into that truth table, you take the equivalence functions and try to split things up a bit. You can kind of factorize out things. So not CI, you can take that out, and then you've got A and not B, or not A and B, all in brackets, and not CI. You can factorize out the true CI over here to do some algebra replacements. And then you get, oh sorry, it's a bit low, but you can get A exclusive or B and not CI, or A equivalent to B and CI. That's either not A and B, or A and B is equivalents. So that's the S function organized. And oh, there's more, but it's disappeared. I wonder if it's, oh, I've zoomed in. Oh dear. Here we go. We can simplify it all the way down to A exclusive or B exclusive or CI. So we've got the A exclusive or B and not CI, big or A equivalent to B. It should be equivalent, sorry. Oh, I've zoomed and it's all disappeared. Someone's confused about carry in. It's another input. That's right, it's another input. These ones are all the inputs, and these ones are outputs. We can do one last replacement trick just to reduce it to 2 exclusive ORs between the three different variables there. Now we can make the circuit because we've got these things. You'll just have to trust me about the cout. Make that 100%, thank you. Trust me. So now we can make a circuit, and you can see what's happening here is we've got, that's an input, that's the carry in from the previous bit. The carry outs have to go somewhere, so they go to the carry in of the next one. So this is, there might have been some lower bit sending its carry out to us, and we're now going to use it. And then we've got our 2 inputs, A and B. We've got our sum output, SI, and CI, our output. Should we make it? Let's do it. I'm going to keep it in this tab so I can refer to it, and you can check my work. So I'm going to make another, we've got input 1, input 2, and our carry in. Now we've got the same thing to start with, the XOR and the AND. I've already got that, XOR and an AND, but I'm going to have to delete these wires. Someone says, is the carry in of the first adder always false? It's always false. You're not carrying in any extra ones from anywhere. It's like you're adding up the ones column in decimal. You don't carry anything into that column because it's not coming from anywhere. Yep, one more input means you can chain these things up and add any number of bits together. I need another XOR and another AND and an OR. So I'll make my logic things. And where's my OR? There's an OR. Okay, now we've got to get the connections right. So the CI goes to the AND and the second XOR. All right, and then the XOR goes to the XOR in the AND. Whoops, oh, that's right. And the AND just goes to the OR. Alrighty, now this AND has to also go to the OR. And this XOR goes to the output, the sum output. And this OR goes to the carry output. I think this is right. Now let's try it. We're going to have add 1. We just get 1 as the output. That's right so far. We add the other 1 as the output. We'll try adding 2. We get the carry out as 1, and that output is 1. Now what happens if we turn on our carry in? That's like adding another 1, isn't it? We're just adding 3 things together now. So we've got 1 for our carry out and 1 for our binary 1. Yeah, man, the diagrams from the originality statements, they all were made by a previous lecturer called Uwe Zimmer, and he was an absolute PDF master. He would produce these beautiful diagrams in PDF, and he would present from a PDF file. I like to present from a website, but the PDF diagrams were so beautiful. Like, look at this diagram, it's just perfect, that I don't want to delete it. We sort of use a copy of it within our slides. So now I'm going to keep having, anytime I have 2 things highlighted, 2 inputs, we get the carry out turned on and the sum not turned on. So these two, it's the same. Anytime I have 1 thing turned on, I get the sum turned on, but not the carry out. And if I have all 3 things turned on, they're both turned on, carry out and the sum. So that's our full adder. Whew. We did it. I can tell you, I was a little bit stressed last night remembering, oh no, there's that logic thing. How am I going to make those things in the class? And I've done it before, but I didn't teach this course last year. I taught it 2 years ago. And it's long enough that I would forget little bits of how I would teach something. So I'm glad I got through that. Thanks for coming with me. There's my full adder demo. Now, what this looks like in context is that we can have a multiple of them all together. Ripple carry adder. So this will be the first bit, or the 0th bit. Whoops. Ah. I don't know what's going on with my mouse here. Lowest bit, and that's the highest bit. Sorry about my handwriting, highest bit. So this one, we don't need a full carry adder for the first one. I guess if we used one, we could just set the input to 0 or false. But in this case, we can just use a half carry adder for the first bit, just to make it a bit simpler. So the carry out of the first bit is going into the carry in of the second, and the carry out of the second is going into the carry in of the third. Now, how many bits can be added together? How many bits can be added together? Have a think about these 3 questions and see if you can come up with an answer. We've only got a few minutes left, and we're going to talk about, well, tomorrow, or on Thursday, sorry, we will talk about subtraction, which is really an exciting topic. So we're going to leave this will be the last thing to talk about today. Someone has asked a very important question, which is, do we have to know them all by heart for exams and quizzes? All the exams and quizzes in this course are open book. So you will have access to that equivalence sheet. That said, you know, it will mainly be in the quiz and you'll have as much time as you need to work things out. We're not teaching a maths course here, so we're just scraping the surface of this stuff so that we can get to how CPUs work, which is what we really want to figure out. There's enough hard questions about CPUs that I don't have to ask too many questions about digital logic. The main thing was to see that it's possible to mechanically go from a truth table showing what you want the outcome to be to a circuit that you can make in silicon. And that's a pretty mind-blowing idea. Like, whatever truth table you have, you can make it in silicon with electricity, and that will give you the output of that truth table. And you don't need to be super creative to do this. You can make a computer program do it. It's completely mechanical to choose those min terms, reduce the algebra to NAND gates, and make a silicon design. Okay, here's someone answered the question. I love this answer. How many bits can be added together? 3. We've got 3 inputs. A and B are two 3-bit numbers. How many bits can be added together? So we can add together OB001 and OB101. How long does it take? Someone says it takes time for electrons to travel in wire. And then someone else has said, well, electrons traveling in a wire is a very controversial statement. And I would say, yes, it is a very controversial statement. The concept of electricity moving is one of those things that comes under the world of chemistry and engineering and physics, and I'm not going to comment too deeply on that stuff. We do know that it does take time for signals to propagate in a wire, and that amount of time can become significant when computers get to be fast enough. So when the wires are very short, as they would be on a silicon wafer, the time would be very small, but it would be measurable. It would be an amount of time it takes for things to happen. Maybe not measurable, but it would be time. It's not instant. And 3, answer, final bit goes into the CPU. But where in the CPU? Where's it going to go? And why would we need to know? So what's the answer of my question? I'm going to work it out. This is going to be A, and this one's going to be B. So A is 1, I'm going backwards, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, and B is 101, 1, 0, 1. Okay, 1 and 1 is 0. That's what we learned today, wasn't it? That's not the way the 5-year-olds do it. But also 1 and 1 is carry the 1. So we have a 1 in C0. Now we've got 3 inputs, 1, 0, 0. We've got 1, 1. That means that we get a 1 as the sum output and a 0 down here. Now we've got 1, 1 again, 1 there, 0 here. Run out of writing apparently. So working backwards, 1, 1, 0. Whoops, 0, 1, 1 I mean, 0, 1, 1. Why is it backwards? Because I guess it's nice for the signals to move from left to right. We often read from left to right, but we add from the smallest digit first. Just as when you were adding decimal numbers in primary school. I mean, when I learned to add decimal numbers, I know people do different things over time, but I was taught that when you add 2 numbers together, like 967 and 34, you start with the tens column here. So you start right to left. That's 1, whoops, yeah, 1 carry the 1, 11, and that's 0 carry the 1, and 1001. That's a nice number. So we also add binary numbers right to left, starting with these 2 first, but because our diagram of the circuit is going left to right, we kind of got to flip stuff around. I know. I mean, it would be nice if we had this kind of standard, if there was a way of describing the standard of which direction we write numbers. And you will actually find out. Someone's asked this great question. What about in a parallel universe? Would we have written numbers smallest to biggest? Well, like, I'm going to blow your mind, but in computers, sometimes we do remember numbers smallest to biggest and biggest to smallest. And there's two ways of talking about it, and we've got a word to describe numbers being stored in memory in different orientations called endianness, which we'll talk about later. What a day, eh? We've blown our minds at every turn. Where's the final carry bit go? Someone was quite right in saying it goes into the CPU. So it just is going to hang out here. If we had a final carry bit, it would hang out there. And when you're doing binary calculations, it's usually useful to know if you have a final carry bit. Because if you're adding numbers bigger than the size of your current memory amount, you want to know if you have to do another calculation with a carried over number. So we usually store that number in case we need to use it later. It will be a big important topic in later weeks. Folks, I have to go too. You have to leave for another lecture. I've got to leave for another lecture. I am so pleased to have had this wonderful first lecture with you folks. I will see you again on Thursday at 9 a.m. I'm terribly sorry to those folks who are in +8 UTC +8, because a 9 a.m. lecture is not a fun time. That would be 5 o'clock in the morning. If you attend, you have my respect as someone with real commitment to your subject, but the lectures will be available online. You can see why this course is fun, right? We have to ask some really fundamental questions about computers, numbers, maths, how we understand the world. I'm looking forward to continuing it with you on Thursday. And with that, I'm going to open OBS in a very messy way because my remote control disappeared, and say, see you later.